All right, you ready, Susan?
Sure. Mr. Westbrook?
Here.
Mr. Schiavone?
Here.
Mr. Cox? Well, we might not have Mr. Cox. Mr. Velada? PJ Velada, are you on mute?
I think they both are.
He's on. I know he's on.
I know, I see both their names at the bottom. Oh.
Okay, Mr. Roberts?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, oh, I see Mr. Cox is getting on right now. Mr. Cox, are you here?
Yes,
Okay.
I think.
Mr. Velada, are you on? He's on. He must not be able to respond. Mr. Roberts is here, correct?
Yes, he's over there.
Right, I see you. And I know Patrick is on. He just has to figure out his mute button, I think.
Plus 14 means there's 10 others.
All right. Okay, well, I think everybody's here. First item is approval of the June 15th, 2020 meeting minutes. Did anybody have any comments or corrections?
I'd so move.
We've got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second
I'll
it,
second.
Mr. Roberts.
All right, motion is second. We should probably do a roll call.
Sure, Mr. Westbrooks?
Yes.
Mr. Schiavone?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Velada? Gotta figure that out. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Velada, you can always message in. Oh, right. Maybe we're getting him now.
Somebody by a train?
Mr. Velada, are you on? I don't know. He's on. It looks like he's on.
All right, Mr. Velada, if you end up getting the mute button worked out, just jump in whenever you think you got it. All right, the meeting minutes pass. The first item is the Chase Bank ATM to be located at 8210 Macedonia Commons Boulevard. Do we have anyone here representing them?
Yes, sir. John Johnson with Wesney Construction is here. And then also my civil engineer, Ken White with DLZ, should also be on the phone.
Yes, I'm on the phone.
Great. Do you guys just want to give a brief overview of what you got planned?
Yeah, so this is Ken White with DLZ. So basically this project entails a drive-through ATM. It's a ATM kiosk with a canopy over top of the ATM. There's a concrete island that the canopy and ATM will sit on. It'll have a light pole and a clearance bar. And then the location of this is going to be along Macedonia Commons Boulevard, out front of the PetSmart store. We're going to occupy some existing green space and put two drive-through ATM in there.
And this is going looks like just kind of south of the driveway that doesn't have the signal. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Just make sure I know. Not eating into the parking lot at all, just all in that the green space tree lawn area.
Yep.
Okay. I know we have comments. Mr. France, I think you had comments on this. I'd like to go over those.
Hi, Mr. Westbrook. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I do have some comments. My memo dated June 28th. I can go over some of those. And then there was a response from Ken White from DLZ to my comments. That response was sent Thursday, July 2nd. And I have some, I can talk through with the Planning Commission and the applicant on those comments that were provided on July 2nd as well. So the subject of review is the Chase Bank ATM. I reviewed an application dated June 17th, 2020 to construct a standalone Chase Bank ATM adjacent to Macedonia Commons Boulevard in the Commons Shopping Plaza. I have a few comments to that. There's 4. The first, the subject area where the ATM is proposed is adjacent to the Commons Boulevard between PetSmart and Alta. The proposal eliminates an existing small green space adjacent to the existing tree lawn. The Commons is Zone B3 and drive-in banks are permitted by right in the district. So there's no action of the commission on that one. The second, a light pole is being proposed, but sheet C3 does not adequately document the location and no photometrics are provided. The applicant states in their comments on July 2nd that the light pole is identified with keyed note 316 in the ATM island detail plan provided on sheet C3, far left side of the page. I do see that. The revised plan set will include photometrics of the light pole. While I do see that, I think my point was it just needs to be documented on the site plan. So if you could just add that note on the site plan, and that's item 16 in your keyed notes. And if item 16 can transfer onto your actual site plan, in addition to your ATM island, that'd be great. And we'll look for those photometrics. We'll look for those photometrics. I'd recommend, I think, just skipping ahead, I recommended approval of the ATM itself, not the signage. That's a separate submittal. And I'd recommend approval subject to some final administrative sign off of the revised plan. And this document, this key for item 16 is just so minor, it can just be added to that revised plan. My third comment, proposed driveway leading to the ATM is shown over an existing 36-inch storm sewer line and easement. And I noted that clarification by the city engineer if the encroachment is permissible or whether language exists in the easement that documents repair and responsibility in the event the storm line requires work. So I do think that's a bigger item that needs to be addressed by the city engineer. 4, and my final comment, the submittal provides details for signage, but a separate sign plan application is not presented to the commission at this time. These are the signage is typically handled by the commission as a separate application, but I did do a cursory review at a few comments. First, the approach column is 9 feet tall and contains the main sign. The maximum height of a sign by code cannot exceed 8 feet tall. Second, the main sign contains 2 elements. The first is the word Chase, which is about 38.68 square feet. The second is the logo, which is about 3.36 square feet. The total of those 2 is a little over 42 square feet. Ground signs cannot exceed 40 square feet. And then the third comment, the side profile, the approach elevation of the ATM contains the name and logo, as well as a logo on the side of the ATM. The code only permits 1 sign per elevation. The same occurs on the front of the ATM as well. So again, I recommended approval subject to a final administrator review of the site plan and of course signage coming back as a separate element. The applicant does have some comments to the signage, and if the commission wants to go through that, that'd be just fine as well.
Thanks, Mr. France. Is the applicants, is there something else you want to comment on any of what Mr. France said?
If I can address the 3 comments, it's fine. And the light pole, that's not a big deal. We can get that keynoted on the site plan. The storm sewer, the comment about the storm sewer, I tried to clarify in the variance meeting we had last week, if anybody was listening in on that. The proposed layout that we're doing for this, we're actually creating, or we're leaving a landscaped area above the storm sewer pipe. The drive-through and the concrete island and ATM foundation are not going to be directly on top of the 36-inch storm sewer. So there will be a roughly 8 to 10 foot wide island that's situated over top of the storm sewer. And the storm sewer itself is actually on the property to the south of us. Now, as far as the easement is concerned, if there is documentation on that, if we can get a copy of it, then we can get that added into a plan set just to clarify that. And then, as far as the signage is concerned, in my responses, I was questioning the calculations on how the signage area was determined. I think there's some discrepancies in the dimensioning, or in how the area of the signs are actually calculated. I think we need to clarify that.
All right, anything else from the applicant right now?
I do not have anything.
Okay, I think the sign calculation, Mr. France, is that in the code that tells how you roughly do that?
It does, yeah.
The area.
And I would say that, we're real close to the 40 square feet. And I don't know who will make application on behalf of Chase Bank for the signage, but typically we'll have, cut sheets, similar to what's here. Looks like this was provided by a company maybe out of Tennessee that probably contractually does a lot of these for Chase Bank. And it could be as simple as, a note on the plan that says that it's going to be 40 square feet or less. Just again, looking at the dimensions, I quickly looked at it and came up with a little over 42 square feet. If it's 40, that's great. And that can be provided on the submittal for the formal application for the signage. Then the question about the height, and there was a comment that was made that if we ensure that the Chase lettering and logo are under the 8 feet height restriction, would that be acceptable? Unfortunately, the height is the height, and so I understand their predicament because it's a clearance bar that I believe they're working against. I did a quick look at that, and it looks like it sits on, I'm assuming, like some sort of a concrete pedestal or something, and that's about 6 inches. And then at the top of the sign, there's maybe a separate piece that's the overhang that's a little over 8 inches. You separate that out, the actual column that the sign is on is about 8.34 feet roughly. So we're about over by about maybe close to 4 inches. It feels like that maybe you could make that work, but I would leave that up to when they submit to see if they can make that work or not.
Okay. Do you have any comments from the building department?
The only concern that I have about this project is the stacking of the cars. I think the stacking of two cars is going to cause a problem with the traffic, in that area. But it was approved by the BZA, and we're moving forward.
Okay. No other comments from the department?
Kevin, this is Joe.
Yes.
I have a comment on,
Yes.
on the layout on sheet C3. On the layout, just looking at the entrance and exiting, there's no radii, dimensioning for the radii coming out of there. All it is that all they show is a 10-foot wide traveled area. That might be kind of tight to get a car around that like that. Does somebody actually do a calculation or something on that, or how do we arrive at that?
So the radius is only striping. So there's a bunch of angled lines there. That's all striping. So there's plenty of room to maneuver in there. And this is Chase Bank has done the maneuverability on this. This is their standard layout for ATM drive-throughs.
Mr. Shavona, if you could tell, it's what they're cutting out of that tree lawn there is really a rectangular shape, and then they're striping out the path to go through there. So you've really got some more room laterally, and it's a bigger cutout area too. Because I was looking at the same thing, and I just checked to see what number 20 was, and it's just paint. So it's a bigger area, but they kind of stripe to keep them in line, I guess. I don't know if that helps make you feel any better.
And the radius on the striping is 29 feet, just to clarify that.
Anyone else on the commission have any comments or thoughts?
Well, I'd like to
I
add one comment. Anthony Cox. I got a little confused on the Chase says they need 9-foot canopy apparently for trucks to use the ATM, and I got confused on the signage. Is that a problem if they have a 9-foot canopy? They need a 9-foot canopy, and I suppose they've done this all over the country. Is that the problem with the signage, or just the height of the canopy? Maybe this is a question.
So, Mr. Cox, I think I can try to jump in on that. So the way the code reads is the height of a ground sign can't exceed 8 feet. And technically the ground sign is that pole or the foundation that's part of the overhang or the canopy. And so what I was suggesting is if there's a way to subtract off a little bit of that, the very top blue piece that's 8 inches tall by 5 feet 11 inches long, which is the canopy piece, that's a separate element. So if you take that off and you take the 6-inch base off, you're left with about an 8.34 roughly foot tall, technically ground sign, and which is about 4 inches, almost 4 inches over the 8 feet. And so my question is, if they were to remove 4 inches of that, would it still be okay for their canopy needs for the height? And then that would meet the code requirement.
And what's the answer to that?
I'm going to jump in here really quick to help answer that. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say that this is Chase's standard canopy layout that they use on all their sites, and I would pretty much be willing to bet that they're not going to be able to lower the canopy height to meet their corporate requirements.
Welcome to the audio.
And the sign itself is actually the face of the approach leg, and we would have to lower both legs of the canopy to do this.
What that also does in by lowering the canopy legs to get it below that 8-foot requirement, it's going to open up more possibilities for the clearance bar to get struck by a vehicle. If a work van comes through with ladder racks and a bunch of ladders on the roof, lowering that canopy height just opens up to more potential issues of a strike on the clearance bar.
Well, Brian, then do we have to get a variance for that one too? Apparently, you already sought a variance for something else. Would they need? Ask Brian this one. Do we need a variant? Would they need a variant to do this then? To make it like all their other ATM machines?
Well, if they can't meet the 8-foot standard, then yes, they would need to seek a variance. And I'm just trying to see maybe if there's a way to work within the code. So there's nothing we could do tonight. We can look at this issue a little closer in the code. And I guess my question to the applicant, do you know who is going to submit for the formal sign application review by the Planning Commission?
If it's not required to be an approved sign contractor, then it'll be me, probably the engineer.
Yeah, I don't know that the city has such a requirement.
We work with Chase and then the sign contractor to come up with the elevations of what they're proposing. So.
Well, Kevin, can we approve this for administrative approval on everything else but the sign? Since the sign matter has to come back to us anyway. Can we approve
signs have to come back.
Pardon?
Yeah, the signs have to come back anyway.
So we can approve the plan so far, except for the sign, right?
Yeah.
And they'd have to maybe seek a variance, or we'd find something in the code to give them some relief. Is that it?
I think so.
Yeah. If you need a motion, I'll make them.
Not quite. Give us a minute, but Mr. Bell, do you have anything in the fire department? Mr. Bell? Do you have any comments, Mr. Bell? I think you're muted still.
You're muted.
He's muted. He can't hear us.
Not project, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission? And just to mention, Mr. Valletta is texting me. He's having technical difficulties, but he can hear everything that's going on, and he just said no comments for me at the. So I got messages coming back from him. Mr. Roberts, anything from you?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right. Then I guess then I would entertain a motion.
Well,
but do keep in mind that we do have the administrative review of the minor plan update to show the light pole. We should mention.
Right. I would move that we approve the plan for administrative approval, and then let the building department handle any minor matters on this approval, except for the sign issue, which will have to come back to us.
Okay. We got a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, second, Mr. Roberts. Any more discussion on this? All right, Susan, could do a roll call when you're ready.
Mr. Westbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Schiavone?
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Valletta? Maybe he can text Mr. Westbrook's. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Valletta says yes.
Okay.
All right, so that passes. And we'll see you guys when you back with the signs, hopefully shortly. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, next on the agenda is proposed solar panels at 9312 North Bedford Road. Is someone here representing this one? If you're speaking, we don't hear you.
I see a
Do
mute.
another. Yes, if someone's trying to speak on this one, we don't hear anything. All right, doesn't sound like anyone's here. We could decide to still review it. They could be having technical difficulties. I'm not sure. Let's at least talk about this and hear any comments, and then we could decide if we need more information from the applicant, or if we can make a motion on this or not. So I don't know if you guys saw it's someone put solar panels on their house. It's North Bedford, north of Ledge Road, on the west side. So as you're heading north, it's on your left. I know Mr. France had some comments on it. Brian, if you're ready, if you want to, I go ahead and ask you ready to take a drink.
You're fine. I have a report dated June 28th. And as Mr. Westbrook said, the proposal is to construct 18 roof-mounted solar panels on the south side of the existing home at 9312 North Bedford Road. Subject site zoned R1 Residence District. I really only had a couple comments. The front yard setback of the subject house is legal non-conforming because the provided setback is just a little over 81 feet and 100 feet is required. However, this proposal doesn't impact that existing front yard nonconformity, so therefore there's no action by the commission needed at this time. When I do my reviews, I just like to be thorough and just point those things out and have them for the record. So if anybody ever goes back and looks at this file, they could see all the reportings on this particular address, and they'll see that there's a legal nonconformity. So at least calling attention to it for the owner's sake, so they understand that slight limitation on their property. And then my other comment, one that does, I think, require some interaction with the applicant. So the section 116302D of the code does require a 10-foot side yard setback, and the site plan doesn't dimension the existing setback distance. The proposal again is to add roof-mounted units, but the plan does detail some type of what looks to be a ground-mounted service panel. And so my question is, if the ground-mounted accessory equipment is proposed, and that's a structure, which it feels like it is, the 10-foot side yard setback is needed and at play. And so the applicant needs to really confirm if the ground-mounted accessory equipment is located on the ground in that side yard setback. If the answer is yes, then a variance would be sought from the BZA. If the answer is no and there's no concern, then fine. And if the answer is yes and it is a structure or equipment in the side yard, could it be put on the roof or moved to the rear of the house? So those are things that I was going to hopefully be able to ask the applicant this evening.
Just looking at that site plan, I'm thinking it's going to have to be in that because it looks like the house is only 7 foot 2 inches off the property line. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, it looks like it's within the side yard setback.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So that's your comments. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Monaco, anything from you, the building department?
No, I don't have anything. The only observation is that normally we have air conditioning units or we have generators on the side of the house, and those are okay to infringe on the side setback. I just have to see what kind of equipment they are going to place on the side of the house, and they may need a variance, just like Brian stated, or they may not. But it's something that we make a determination after we get a little more details on the drawing. That's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't, Mr. Westbrook, so I can't. That's a great point that Mr. Monaco makes. So, and no, that's something, if the applicant were here, they could kind of walk us through. But if the commission's okay, the request is pretty straightforward. If the commission's okay with it, they could approve it subject to confirmation administratively. And as Nino said, if he gets more detail and it proves to be acceptable, then they wouldn't have to come back to the planning commission.
Okay. That might work. Commission members, do you guys have any?
Let me ask a question. I didn't quite understand, Mr. Monaco. They're saying if an air conditioning unit or something else on the side of the house infringes on that 10-foot setback, the city waives it. Is that what I understood? They don't care about the 10-foot if it's a air conditioning unit or something. They allow that even though it's within the 10 feet. Did I misunderstand?
There is some like canopies, air conditioning, or generators. They are allowed to be placed in the side of the house, and they could infringe into the setback. Yes.
So that you just administratively write over the ordinance on that one a little bit, right? Is that what you're saying for something like that?
Yeah, that is correct. Once that I find out exactly what type of equipment and what kind of structures, and it basically is it something that's going to be permanent in nature, or is it something that it would need replacement, like a condenser, like a generator? So if it's something that's permanent in nature and it's attached to the wall, they definitely would have to comply with the setback. But if it's something that could be easily moved, or then it may not comply. It may not need to comply with the setback requirement.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a lot of detail on exactly what that equipment is on the outside. There's a lot of details on connections and hookups and things like that, but it could be a small box. It could be some massive structure with tons of batteries in it.
Yeah, I think it's what it looks like. It's a transfer switch, which is installed there, so to make sure that if the solar system generates more power than the house requires, some of that electricity would be going back to the grid. And sometimes if you backfeed the line, alignment they could be working on the power line in the street, or somebody could get electrocuted. So there's an equipment there that prevents somebody from being electrocuted because of backfeeding of a line. So that's what it looks like it is.
Part of the packet, we have one of those shut. It's typically a contactor that once it senses no power coming from the line side of the provider, then it opens that contactor so that they cannot backfeed electricity into. But I do have a couple, I guess, out of safety or education, that they're instant rapid shutdown. I was just concerned as to where they're going to put those in the line, how close they're going to be to the power, to the solar panels. Based on information that I had received early on years ago, the only way to shut off these solar panels is to cover them. They will continue to generate. So the only way you can turn them off is tarp them. And with the homeowner's permission, if this moves forward, I would like to take some of the fire department personnel up there for education and training on how the system is and what it works and what it's about.
Is that anything you think would affect our approval, or just maybe like getting their permits or things like that? Ultimately,
According to the fire code, there's no permits required.
oh,
Well, Kevin, I think I'd move to approve it administratively and let them work out these things and talk to the applicants a little more and go out there and inspect the thing. Approve it subject to administrative approval by the building department. That's what I would suggest.
okay.
Do you think?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I hate to hold them up. I mean, I think Mr. Bell, you've got some questions. It's more, how does it work? Is that what I was understanding, right? How does it work? How can it be shut down? Things like that. It might just be good to work with the homeowner just to almost see it as a test case or something for you.
Well, and if we would have an issue up there or a fire, we will have to deal with it.
That's true.
I know commercially there are requirements for how close to the roof and around skylights, and they have to have access on the roof. There is a store over there in Broadview Heights on 82.
Mm-hmm.
It's a grocery store. The entire roof is solar panels.
Wow. I guess you should be able to at least get a chance to review these from a plan review standpoint. Is that correct from your end, Mr. Bell?
Yeah, I mean, I would, typically fire department has no jurisdiction over residents, but it's pretty much all regulated commercially. But I would hope that the homeowner would appreciate the fact that because they could be among the first in the city, that, from an informational and training point of view, so that the fire department is familiar with what it is and how it works.
Yeah, I would think, and maybe Mr. Monaco, maybe that's something you could help arrange, is maybe talk to the homeowner and say, hey, when this thing gets up, or when the guys are out there hooking it up, could we bring a handful of firemen out there just to kind of understand the system for their own safety, and for, if these guys get it and it's successful, it's going to be just, bing, bing, bing. People are going to probably want this kind of thing. Maybe you could help arrange that, so the fire department understands that.
I'm sure that they would be glad to comply with that. But, by looking at the drawing, they really meet all the requirements that we have. They have a path around so that if in case of an emergency, a fireman or a first responder can walk around the panels the way they're installed. The height regulation it's in place. The ordinance mostly says that the panels cannot be higher than the roof at the point that they are, and so they meet all the requirements. We had a structural engineer assess the roof, make sure that it's going to hold the extra weight. So they meet really all the building requirements. So, but I'll be glad to talk to them about setting up a meeting with the fire department. Absolutely.
We appreciate that. That would be good. Okay. Any other comments out there?
Yeah,
Mr.
Brian
Brown?
or Kevin, yeah. I have one comment. I was just looking over their calculations here. Everything seems to be okay, except that just for, I guess, formal purposes, they have a wrong value for shear value for the wood that they're assuming is the 2x6, the rafters. If you look on the first page, where it says here 2x6 rafters, 16 inches on center, a shear value F sub V is 180 psi. That can't be. the normal shear value for wood is either 85 or 85 to 95.
Okay.
So, I mean, according to what they calculated here, there's no problem. But I mean, it just throws their base information off. So, personally, I think it should be corrected, but it's not anything that's going to hold it up.
You know, it might be worth is maybe either sending an email to Nino or calling him tomorrow and kind of explaining that and have him relay that. If it's nothing that, you know, would affect their site plan approval or anything like that, but something that he can have them correct so that they get that on the record in the right way.
Mr. Chairman, I think it was a typo. It was supposed to be 85 instead of 185.
Okay. Well, that sounds a little bit better.
It was supposed to be? Okay. Well,
maybe just ask him to correct that so that we get it on in the file the right way. I'm sure that's something easy they could fix. Okay. Well, there's no other comments. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve, subject to administrative review of the side yard setback infringement. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? So I guess this would either be they verify that there is no infringement, or Nino would you know, see if this compares or if this is something, you know, close to an air conditioning unit, something like that they would normally allow, particularly if it could move, if needed. Anybody else? Or should we vote?
Okay, Kevin Westbrook?
Good. Yes.
Mr. Schiavone?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Vallada? You can touch.
Mr. Vallada says yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I would thank somebody, but nobody's here to thank, so we'll skip that. Next is Ohio State Waterproofing, 393 East Highland Road. So I know we got some original plans. They were pulled off the agenda last month. Back last month, I think Mr. France had some comments. I think they sent some revised plans. Mr. France had some revised comments or responses to that. Maybe the best way to start is who's here representing Ohio State Waterproofing?
Leon. This is attorney Michael Dijon on behalf of Ohio State Home Services, Inc. As you also heard, Leon, our architect, is also on the call, and we have two of our builders representatives, Jason and Bruce, on the call as well. Thank you for your time, Mr. Westbrooks.
Oh, sure. Why don't you guys go ahead and give us a brief overview of what's planned out here?
Yeah. How you doing? Leon Sampat here. So we are proposing a 10,675 square foot building on two existing lots. The breakup of the building is about 1,074 square foot of new office area and 9,601 square feet of warehouse area. As I mentioned, the structure is going to be built on two separate lots. Currently, the parcel just adjacent to the existing Ohio State waterproofing structure is they currently own that parcel, and that's approximately, there's a 3,000 square foot building on that parcel that will be removed. And then the adjacent parcel to that, the adjacent parcel to the east is an existing residential parcel. So Ohio State Waterproofing is in contract with that owner to purchase that property. And as part of that, that will create a little bit of a dilemma because the residents would like to stay until they're deceased or can no longer maintain their property. They're going to move out at that point. However, so what we're proposing here is that the site be combined but then split, and then the residents in the rear would have a access easement. We've tried to, and at the point that the residents vacate the property, that easement and the lot split would all become a combined parcel, so there would be no residential use at that point. We are proposing for the new structure, we've got 22 parking spaces, calculations based on the warehouse office area, we are required to have 16. We are closing off the existing curb cut that was next to the 1,000 square foot building and just creating one new curb cut, the east end of our parcel, and then accessing the existing Ohio State property through 2 access drives. Those will have access easements on there. We are losing a couple parking spaces for the existing Ohio State building. Also calculated their requirements. They're required to have 62 parking spaces. Currently, they're provided with 93, so the few that we are losing does not affect their calculation. The new construction of the building will match the existing Ohio State corporate office on the west side. The building will have the metal panels, horizontal metal panels that would match that building face block. The main purpose of this structure, we would have overhead garage doors on the east and west end. They would pull in their trucks, and then the material would be loaded in their trucks in the morning, and then their trucks are then also protected. I don't know if anybody has any additional questions on the project.
Okay.
And this is Michael DeJohn again. We are aware that there's going to be a few variances that are going to be required. We've submitted our plans to the BZA as of Friday of last week for the 3 variances. And we would ask that we get some type of, we understand that the sequence isn't ideal here, but we would like to be able to get some type of conditional approval on the site plans and the building plans, subject to BZA approval, obviously.
What are the 3 BZA? What are the appeals? Or there's a variance for the continued use of the residence during the life estate period. The residents are 92 years old each, so we believe it'll be a short period of time, or relatively speaking, it should be, not too long of a period of time, I should put it, and that will help the current non-conforming use come into conformity eventually. The second easement is it relates to frontage between the new building and the residence. There will be a frontage issue. And the third is as it relates to the, let's call it the access road to get back to the residence. The code currently calls for it to be concrete or asphalt, and we're asking that it be a gravel road. The cost to do that will be very, very high, and it's only going to be for a limited period of time, because once the life estate does end, that will be eliminated and it will become landscaping. Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that update. Understand. Mr. France, you've had comments, and you've gotten responses, and you've got new comments. However you'd like to best go over those. I'll let you take care of that.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook.
Mr. Chair.
And Michael, that was a very well put way of saying the life estate. I've never heard that one, so that's good. I did provide you all with a memo June 28th. That memo was lengthy and had, obviously a number of issues on there, and that resulted in a request for a meeting by the applicants. And so I met with, I think pretty much everybody on the line tonight on a Zoom meeting on July 1st, talked through my June 28th comments, talked through some of the site plan issues, and it was a good meeting. I got some good clarification from Leon, the architect, on some of the comments I had on my June 28th memo. That resulted in the applicant moving forward and making some revisions as they understood some of my concerns. They provided some revised plans to which I marked up in just handwritten comments and provided those back to the applicant as well as to the city. And that resulted in a July 13th, second Zoom meeting to follow up and speak to those issues from that handwritten markup. And then again, good comments, good dialogue, a few outstanding issues that were going to be cleaned up on the plans. And that resulted in the revised plans that I believe everybody has this evening that are the most recent issue date of July 16th, 2020. I received those plans on July 17th. And so I provided comments in a memo dated July 19th. I just sent out over email late today. To give you guys some chronological timeline. I'll say the applicants have been very easy to work with and willing to work with the city, and that's appreciated. And they've made a lot of revisions. So I looked over these most recent plans, and again, I don't know if the applicant has this July 19th dated memo. Do you guys have this?
This is Michael DeJohn. I haven't received a copy yet.
I have not.
Okay. So I literally just sent it out at like 4:45 today. So, I'll walk through that and so normally you like to read all the good stuff in the book to get to the ending to be surprised, but I'll start with the ending. And that's that I am recommending approval of the preliminary site plan subject to the variances that were identified by the applicant's legal counsel. And I would agree, to the best of my knowledge at this point, there's the variance to permit the gravel driveway instead of the concrete asphalt hard surfaced driveway that leads back to that rear property, a variance to permit the creation of the landlocked parcel, and then a use variance to permit maintenance of that residential use in the industrial zoning district. So those are three variances, and understand that, that those have been applied for by the applicant at this point. I want to come back to that issue in a minute as it relates to the variances, and I do have a suggestion of possibly a quick development agreement or memorandum of understanding to sort of ink some of these things into place. Beyond just that request for variances. I think that might be beneficial to the applicant and the city. So I'll now start out with my report that leads to that conclusion. And in my report, the Planning Commission, you'll see I put in bold italics the revisions from my June 28th, my last memo, and then the subsequent reviews that I've conducted at the applicant's request of the revised plans. So the request is to construct a 10,605 square foot building. Previously, it was shown as 15,358 square feet and then 10,070 square feet. It looks like we've landed on 10,675. And the property is zoned limited industrial. I believe the use is acceptable as the applicant has outlined with the 9,601 square feet for the warehousing, assembly prep area for the building, and then about 1,074 square feet of administrative offices. I understand that this space actually the square footage is actually inside the existing space. So this will allow them to expand into this secondary facility, free up some space inside their existing facility. Obviously, they're doing well, which is great for the city, and maybe free up a little room for them to move around inside the buildings. And that's really the purpose of constructing this. They do desire to maintain it a separate lot from the main building or the primary building, because in the future they may decide to perhaps it gets sold off or It's just a little more flexible than to combine all the lots together, which is fine. That's a business decision. Because that was an issue that we had talked through in some of the reviews that I had done. With regard to some of the comments on the site plan, as we had seen that we do have that back parcel that's a residential use. It's a legal nonconformity. And the plan that the applicant has settled on now is to create about a 26,647 square foot lot. Previously, it scaled off roughly around 13 or so thousand. They have clarified and indicated that that's a 26,647 square foot lot, which is a lot that would be compliant with the R1 residence district standards. So in fairness, the applicant has taken the most restrictive approach to the lot that they're trying to create on a temporary basis by creating a larger lot, if you will. And again, that's planned to be a temporary lot split. That is an issue under the code, as we've talked about. There would be some variances needed for this. In this case, the use variance to maintain residential and in the non-conforming situation, if you will, in the industrial district. The BZA can address that issue through a use variance. Again, I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I think that it might be beneficial to both parties to document some of this into a development agreement or memorandum of understanding, is to clearly identify that period of time and some of these terms we talked about with regard to the temporary nature of that lot split and that use. Previously, more parking was shown as being required. As you see in my item number 2, based on the building size and the correct calculation for warehousing, 16 off-street parking spaces are really required for this new building. 22 are provided wholly within the site of the new building. As previously shown, it was some shared parking. That concept is being eliminated. So there's no action at this time on the behalf of the Planning Commission. The off-street parking requirements are being met on the subject site. Item number 3, section 1171, 11E2 requires off-street parking in the front side or rear yard to be properly screened with landscape materials. I had some comments previous to this report stating that the landscaping that was being shown, which was primarily arborvitae, really wasn't acceptable and didn't meet the code requirements. I had suggested Norway spruce or concolor spruce, along with some other hardy deciduous species such as a celebration maple or a pin oak. The applicant has revised their landscape plan and in my opinion reflects compliance with the screen requirements. They're now showing Norway spruce and a type of a maple. I believe it was take a look here. A gold maple and Norway spruce, which are acceptable and meet the intent of the code to provide coniferous and deciduous trees for screening. So I think they've complied with that at this point. My fourth comment in this review related to the road frontage. The applicant previously had shown couple different access drives. They've eliminated those, and they have internal 24-foot wide access drives. Previously, upon review, some of those access drives and how they were configured were conflicting, in my opinion, with some of the parking spaces. They've since bumped the site a little bit further to the north and freed up some of those drive aisles to make them less, I guess, confusing, if you will. I still do maintain that the existing apron on parcel 33 00145 and the existing apron, the existing Ohio State waterproofing building to the west, really, that's really the best way in and out, in my opinion. But understand that the applicant is desiring to utilize that back residential space, and so they would have this temporary drive that's adjacent to the new driveway, and that they're trying to keep everything to the east of the site. Respect that, understand it. If they move forward and get their variances, that's how it'll be. If for some reason they don't get variances for that back area and they still move forward with the project, I think the driveway, utilizing the existing driveway for the Ohio State waterproofing building with access, cross access to the site, combining one larger apron would be probably better, but it's a bit of a moot point if they move forward and get their variances. We talked about the driveway being hard surface. The proposal is for gravel, and the applicant stated they're going for a variance. They're aware that signage will need to be submitted as a separate application for a future planning commission review. My comment on this current review under item number 7, a photometrics plan was previously provided. It was shown on sheet 4 of some of the previous submittals. And actually the western property line illustrated lighting levels exceeding the 1-foot candle standard that the commission has historically employed. But that's not on, I don't see it's on these revised plans. So I just recommend that when the final site plan submittal comes in, these plans be cleaned up and the photometrics be included on the plan sheet. For instance, or example, on this current resubmittal, the dock or the man doors, if you look at the proposed building on sheet 1 of 3, the proposed man doors are on the side of the building. That has been revised and corrected when you look at sheet SD1-1. Those man doors have been moved to the rear of the building. That was a request I had. On the side of the building, they're in the lane of travel, the 24-foot wide lane of travel. I just felt that wasn't safe. But this current plan sheet, as submitted on this resubmittal, still shows the side entry on sheet 1 of 3, but then corrected on SD1. So the point is, when the final plans do get submitted, clean up all these little details, and just so we have one final set of corrected plans. And I just noted that in my re-review here. The same thing, if you take a look at the front of the building, if you go to SD1-1, you'll see the walkway leading in, the new concrete walkway leading into the office building. This is something that the applicant, when I met with them and talked to them, previously that walk was showing leading out into the lane of travel, the 24-foot wide access lane of travel to the west side of the building. Upon request, they moved that concrete walk directly leading into the barrier-free parking space. This way it gets folks using that space from having to go out into the lane of travel and access the building, so they directly have access to that walk. So that was something that the applicant did at our request as well. The landscape plan I mentioned earlier, a separate plan sheet L1-1 has been provided, and that does reflect compliance with my previous comments. And as I noted earlier, they're using Norway spruce and gold maples to help screen some of the parking, which I think is acceptable. I don't know where this sits with review by the architectural review by the city's designer. The commission may have that review. If so, that's great. Otherwise, that would need to be something that would be part of the final plan approval. And then the stormwater management details are now provided, and typically you'd get a review letter from the city engineer, and you may have that. So coming back full circle, I stated the applicant's done a nice job working with the city and staff to clarify the development plan, adhere to the code requirements. We do have these issues, which are issues that just need to be worked through, and they recognize that. So what I had recommended is that the commission consider a preliminary site plan approval at this time, subject to the BZA review and approval of those variances. The variance for the gravel driveway, the variance to have a landlocked parcel, and then a use variance to temporarily allow that residential in the industrial district. And I said earlier, and I still think it might be worth the applicant's legal counsel speaking to the city's legal counsel, Mark Cadetti, and talking about some sort of MOU or development agreement that sort of cements all this, if you will, no pun intended, into place with some of these outstanding issues that are sort of bigger, higher level issues like the temporary use and sort of when those things ultimately go away. And the applicant's legal counsel mentioned that the gravel driveway would then become landscaping. I think those are types of things that can be documented in that MOU or development agreement. Hopefully I didn't confuse everybody too much and I can answer any questions you may have.
Oh, thank you. Well-deserved drink. Let's go around. Mr. Chavon, you have any questions or comments? Is that a no, Mr. Chavon?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Roberts?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cox?
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay. Mr. Volata does not have any either. Mr. Monaco, anything from the building department? Any concerns?
Today I received the request for a variance for the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I am aware of those 3 variances have been requested. However, I have not gotten any drawings showing the new created parcel for the residential and the setbacks from the house to the front property, and I don't know if any additional variances may be required. So I'm requesting tonight to be provided with all the numbers on the house, all the setbacks, the size of the house, the size of the lot, so that we can make a determination whether more variances are required.
Okay, so I'd encourage the applicants to contact Mr. Monaco tomorrow if he can, and make sure he's got everything he needs.
SD11 sheet.
I'm sorry, that was tough to understand.
We've got all that information on our SD 1.1 sheet, but we will make sure we get that over to him.
Okay, yeah, make sure you can find all that stuff. Mr. Bell?
And Mr. Westbrooks,
yes.
Sorry, real quick. Leon, if you can, or you'll need to, create a lot split plat, and I think this is part of that. This really gets to, Michael, maybe you could reach out to Mark Cadetti. I think that could be something that could be addressed in the MOU development agreement, whatever could be worked out. But the lot split plat does need to be approved by the planning commission, but they can't approve that until you obviously get your variance to allow that landlocked parcel on a temporary basis. So BZA, if they grant that, it would still then, and you could bring it back at final plan approval, but you need to bring a lot split plan based on that variance approval that should you get that, so the planning commission can formally approve the lot split plan that BZA has granted the variance for, if that makes sense.
It does, understood. And I'll reach out to Mr. Gadetti tomorrow, and we have no issue with making an MOU of some sort, also a condition for preliminary approval today.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bell, you still on there?
Once they get through all of these and we get to the point of construction plans, my initial thought is that building will have to be fully sprinkled based on size and use.
So hopefully that's something you guys I see some nodding.
Well, I think we're under 12,000 square feet, so it's going to be a non-separated mixed use. So that's 12,000 for an S1 use. So we were
But
not.
if they park the trucks inside, I think your limit is 5,000 square feet. And historically, in the original building, they park all their trucks inside at nighttime. That building is fully sprinkled.
Yeah, I think it still falls under the S1 12,000.
They'll be reviewed then at the time of submittal.
Okay. Question for Mr. France. The suggestion of the MOU to clarify a lot of the details, is that something you feel should be part of the motion? I've got it written down as doing something like suggesting or asking for an MOU between the city and the applicant.
Yeah, I think the applicant's legal counsel has suggested they find that acceptable. So based on that, I think the commission could certainly state that in their preliminary plan approval, contingent upon getting the variances and discussing an MOU or development agreement to identify these issues in a document between the city and the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah, our plan would be to explain how we're going to eliminate any of the nonconformity that's being created and the requirement for these variances, and how we will be eliminating those again upon the upon the expiration of the life estate.
Okay. All right. I'll give one more chance. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Mr. Vallata said he had none. You guys all good, Commission?
Yes.
I've got a bunch. Okay, I got a bunch of notes. Maybe I'll go through these as a motion for site plan approval. Contingent on approval of the 3 variance requests from BZA. Susan, I don't know if you want me to go through each one of those.
I have it written down.
Okay, so the 3 approval of the 3 variance requests from the BZA. Second, administrative review of the final plans for photometrics and plan detail consistency. Let me know when you got that.
Got it.
3, a final review by the city architectural designer. And 4, an MOU between the applicant and the city to clarify the details, the nonconformities. I think that's it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second.
I think Mr. Cox might have it first this time. But all right, any more discussion?
This was for preliminary approval contingent on all of that you said?
I was thinking it was site plan approval. Mr. France, are we approving site plan approval, or did you say we couldn't do site plan approval? Does it have to be a preliminary?
Yeah, this is a preliminary site plan approval. You'll need to have them come back for a final plan approval.
For a final, okay, that's preliminary. And we had the second. I guess the only one thing I'll discuss is I put in there, Mr. France had there, the city architectural designer reviewing it. I looked through it. I know it's not, doesn't look like a lot of the stuff that we're putting in right now, but it does match the existing building. I think it'd be reasonable for them to match it and do a nice job of matching it, but not ask them to redo the entire existing building to look brick and mustard, all that kind of stuff. But it looked like they were doing a decent job. But Pam, the reviewer, she'll make sure. Any more discussion? Anybody? All right, Susan, if you want to do a roll call?
Kevin Westbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Chiavone,
Yes.
Mr. Cox,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Bellotta.
And he says yes. And that was for preliminary. So they will come back because I think he asked about that. Gentlemen, it sounds like you guys have the, good chunk of the things worked out. Hopefully, get through BZA. Sounds like the bigger challenge, but we'll see when you get done with that.
Thank you very much for your time, and I just want to go on the record saying Mr. France is probably the best at his job, and you guys are lucky to have him.
You weren't supposed to say that out loud. It goes to his head.
Yeah, boy, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure I piped that loud enough so my wife could hear that.
I think the video.
I was talking professionally.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey guys, I did send you while we were talking. I sent everybody the on your side that memo I just sent out to planning commission. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. My chat open. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I think that was the last item. Any miscellaneous? Susan, committee members?
Nope.
All right. What's our next meeting date? Is August
17th.
something?
Yep.
What is it, 17th? 17th.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing everybody's going to be sitting at home probably for that one as well.
Right.
Maybe I'll see you guys again someday. I guess that's it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Maybe next month we'll let Mr. Bellotta speak.
Yes, hopefully.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So
I'll make a
moved.
motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I can't remember how to get out.